Yo, what is going on, IG? We are getting this live going, about to jump on with my buddy Tanner, and we're going to talk a little bit about content, which should be super fun. I think Tanner's about to hop in here, and then we're going to get rocking and rolling. Let's see if this works. Yo, what's going on, brother? Thanks for joining in. Oh, yeah. First time doing this, so please excuse all the technical difficulties. There he is,
What is up?
the
How's it
man, the myth,
going?
the legend.
How are you?
Wonderful. Doing a little better now.
Yeah? I know. I always get a nice little grin when I start talking to you.
Hopefully this works for me, dude. This is actually my first time ever. I'm kind of ashamed that I preach about doing content this much, and this is my first time ever doing this, but we're rocking and rolling.
Hey, mine too, but I'm less ashamed, so.
Yo, so I opened this up that we were going to be talking about content creation, etc. And I know that we wanted to jump in because it sounds like you're trying to get your head around what that looks like for your space, dude. But I think one of the helpful things for people tuning in would just be to like intro yourself, what you do, and then we can just like jump into more specifics around it, hopefully add some value.
Sounds good.
Yo, so I guess the quick 411 on me and Tanner. Tanner and me met when we were in China studying abroad, and immediately hit it off. Both went to NC State University, and now Tanner is a consultant at EY, and yours truly tries to run an agency day to day.
Dude, I was thinking about kind of our background a little bit ago, and it was crazy because I was like, you've been a part of three big things in my life, as far as first when we met in China, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But like that was the first time I'd ever been to Asia. Probably you as well. Out of the country, didn't know anybody. Met you over there. We kicked it off. It was awesome. And then, fast forward a little bit, and then we find ourselves in Singapore together. I'm over there interning. We spent some time in Bali. It was awesome. And then you helped me do some shooting for a conference I planned, which was a huge part of my life. So it was pretty cool. I was thinking back. I was like, dang, you've been around for some good ones.
I've watched you become the man that you are today.
Yeah.
We were talking the other day. You were mentioning about how you wanted to get into creating more content. And I loved that thing that you put out, like basically crowdsourcing ideas from your community. But maybe run people through like what made that real for you. Like why did that happen then, and where's your head at with starting to get into being more active online?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, right? I mean, as everything's going on right now, I just took some time to kind of take a step back and say, hey, like, what does my personal brand look like? I have I have the accomplishments I've had in my life, and then I've had work's been a lot in the last couple of years, and I'm just like, what is when someone thinks of Tanner Purvis, what's the brand, what's the vibe they get, and I've been, I think, probably above average as far as posting content, but it hasn't been linked well together. I don't think I haven't had a constant flow and a story.
Yeah.
And so I was just thinking, and you've honestly inspired me a lot with the videos and the content that you put out recently. I think they're fantastic. And I just thought, I was like, what's the message I want to send, and what's the flow that I can get people on board, and say, hey, that's Tanner Purvis, and in a way that's humble, and that's a way that's genuine to me, but it puts further my message that I want people to hear. Yeah, so it's just kind of that inherent, like I want that, and I want to figure out what that looks like.
Dude, it's so real. And I think like with the situation right now, for a lot of people, they have the second to like sit back, and we have a little extra time on our hands, and it's kind of a good point to reevaluate where you want to be, what you want to be doing, and how you want to represent yourself. And I love that message that we were talking about the other day. Is like, if you're afraid of it, like, let's not even call it personal branding. Let's not call it PR. Let's just call it awareness. And like, let's just think about leveling up our awareness as individuals. Because if you're ambitious, young, hustling, trying to get it, awareness is going to be essential, whether you want to be a mayor, whether you want to be a top chef, whether you want to be like the best accountant, whether you want to be the best consultant. Like, general awareness, whether it's within your organization or within your industry, like all of those things stack to help you get there. And that's why I was so stoked, because I've never really talked to a consultant per se around like, hey, what is your personal brand as a consultant? How can you leverage that? And it just seems like what's interesting from
Yeah.
your position is you have a wealth of so many unique experiences with so many incredible brands. How can you pull on this wealth and be like, hey, this stuff can actually help leverage and add value to my community online, which is definitely something that I try to hold true to, at least with what I'm doing on LinkedIn more and more, is like, what is that value add strategy, so to speak? And where does that pull from? And it's almost like you're living it day to day. It's just a matter of figuring out the best way to document it instead of create it and turn that into something that you can leverage online, you know?
Yeah, and it's interesting because when I think about consulting, and I've been in it for about a year and a half, so obviously no pro here, but it's they always use the hourglass analogy of when you go into consulting, you start wide, right? You get your foundation, you try out a bunch of different industries. And so when you think of that through a content lens, it's sometimes overwhelming because like, your first project, you could be in life sciences. Your second project, you can be in, manufacturing. And your third project, you're in industrial products. And so that from a content perspective, each one of those industries, it's something different.
Mm-hmm.
And then you slowly find your niche and kind of get to the middle of that hourglass. And then as you specialize, then you kind of come out and widen again.
Oh,
And
yeah.
when I look at from where I am now of trying to get that foundation, it's kind of intimidating a bit of where do I focus my time. Obviously, personal branding can be like a good start, I think, but from
Yeah.
a professional standpoint, and we'll love to hear your input here too, is it's really interesting because the content is in every single industry.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's not really a place you can focus, but it goes back to your point. I'm kind of living that lie of,
Yeah.
get over it, just start, just do something, right?
Dude,
So,
it's so funny we're having this conversation or about this topic, because earlier this week I was talking to a guy who I reconnected with from my time in college, and he was just trying to get into health and wellness. He's like, hey, like I love health and wellness. I'm super inspired by it, and I love that. But there was almost too much thought process on what is it going to look like in 6 months when I'm a famous health and wellness influencer. I was like, dude, the idea is just to get the ball rolling. Like, you're going to curate the look, the brand, the logo, the process as you go through it. But there's such an essential part of just like starting that momentum, and you almost just build this groundswell of like activity, content, learnings. Like, you're optimizing and figuring out your process as you go through it. And you almost have to like begin just trusting yourself that I'm going to figure this out. But the first video that I put out is not going to be the dude who's got 1 million subscribers on YouTube and is killing it. Like, I'm going to just go through this process. And I love it when I look at like a lot of these big concert videographers and creators. Like, when you go to the bottom of their Instagram feed, it's like a selfie with a chihuahua, and they're like, yo, like I just got on Instagram. So it's like,
that's my kind of content right there.
oh yeah, exactly. But it's such a great place to put your mind in if you're getting into creating content. Like, go to some of your favorite people and just go to the first YouTube video, go to the first Instagram post, the first tweet. Like, dude, I go back through my Facebook feed, and I was like Facebooking Drake lyrics when I was like in 8th grade, like trying to create a cool post. And now,
Yep.
you've just seen yourself go through this process. So I love, like, the thing that I just hammer with people is like, your brand is you, just be you. And as long as it is you the entire time, then it's gonna resonate. It's gonna be, it's going to be in the right direction, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because at the end of the day, it just resonated with you at that point in time. And if you change, that's fine, but don't be so afraid of, is it going to look like when I'm, what it's going to look like when I'm big, that you don't start now. And like, I think it's essential, man.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point and kind of an analogy there of, I mean, we've all gone back on Twitter, on Facebook, 12 years ago, you're like, there's no way I said that.
Like,
Like,
no,
that's like, yeah, like that's not even me. But I think it brings a really good point of, that was kind of a no strings attached, right?
yeah.
We were feeling something and we said it, right? And that could have been a immaturity thing, but it's also like, that was in essence our brand at the time, and we said it. And we've grown and we've kind of rolled with the punches, and now we would never say anything like that. So I think when your point of like a kind of creating content, it evolves as you evolve, and your network evolves with you around you. So it's really interesting. I never thought about that. That's a really good piece of advice, I think, to help people and myself get out of that. I got to be perfect. I got to make a really good, video. That's really interesting. I like that.
It's like what what people always worry about at the beginning. It's like, what is it going to look like? What is my brand name going to be? Like, what should I call myself? And I was just talking to my sister about this before we got on here, and she was just asking me because she's getting into like doing more content around acting and movement, and she was like, so what should I like? I'm trying to figure out what I should call myself. And I was like, look, your name lasts forever. Like, your name's not going anywhere. You're always gonna love it. Like, you get this little nickname and like you like it for 6 months, then it goes away. And what ends up happening, just from like a digital marketing standpoint, like, you have super inconsistent branding. But if you're probably not going to change your name, let's be honest about it. And like, when you're 80, you're going to probably like your name as much as you do now. So it's like, that's a constant for you, and it serves as a great foundation. But I talk to people every week that have started to see more content, that are interested in just kind of picking my brain. And it's like, just get over like the minutia of just like getting going. Is people just trudge there and wait, I'm going to start a podcast, I'm going to do a video series, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. When at the end of the day, dude, we all have iPhones. iPhones are filming in super high quality video. You take a look at TikTok, like, the videos that are popping on TikTok are made on iPhones, not Canons, not Sonys. Like, the content creation process can be so much more in the moment, so much more low intensity, low budget, and it can be just as effective, right? We have the tools at our hands, given how we grew up in this digital world that we have, which is awesome.
Yeah. So when you're saying that, it kind of, to me, when you talk about TikTok, when you talk about, and even Instagram Live, right? It's pretty informal, low barriers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's cool because I think there's a shift in content there of you want to be genuine, you want to be authentic.
Mm-hmm.
And these platforms make it so easy just to get out and do it and test it out.
Yeah.
But I also think there's truth from a content perspective of people want to hear what's real, right? People want to hear what's authentic.
Yeah.
People don't want your best self. They want the raw details of how you're feeling, what you're doing. And I think currently we've seen kind of a wave of people doing that. And now with the whole lockdown and everything, I think there's going to be a big shift in content creation. And I'm sure you've already seen a huge influx of people creating and stuff, but.
I mean, how many people are trying to, like, get into the TikTok dances now, just like kind of testing with it, even though it might be funny. Like, we're all still like thinking about creating more content. We see like the traction that people have, and it's exciting. But dude, so what are you like, what types of content are you thinking about creating? Like, I think that would be an interesting place to go with this conversation, to like really think about different streams of content for different people in different places, in different careers, different industries, different walks of life. Where are you at with that?
Yeah, so I put that poll up on Instagram a couple of days ago and got a variety of responses.
Actually, huge shout out to Tanner before we go any farther. Crowdsourcing, and I talked about this to clients all the time. Crowdsourcing ideas from your community is like the best way to just start creating content that resonates. So you already got an A+ in the content creation handbook for that one.
Wow, I'm doing well. But yeah, so I mean, I got a variety of responses, some more serious than others, but all in good spirit, right? And so I did the crowdsourcing because I wanted to see, the people that I follow are people I care about, and people that I value their opinion, and they've seen me posting kind of informally for a while, and what do they want to see me post? So that was kind of step one, and I got some ideas there. But I mean, I think I really want to tie it back to, something that's kind of long-term meaningful. And one thing I personally love to do is I love connecting other people to opportunities that like then make them fulfilled.
Yeah.
And not just connecting people to opportunities, because that can be very service level, but ones that they do and they're like, wow, like that's like their goosebump moment, right?
Yeah.
They do it and they get that sense of fulfillment. And I feel strongly that I have a desire to be that person that can connect them to those kinds of opportunities.
Yeah.
Right. And it's vague because I can't hypothesize what those are for them. But I think there's steps I can do to kind of reach a broad spectrum, and then hope that impacts people in different ways. And so that primarily, and
For
that
sure.
it's, I don't know, right? Like that content can look very, very different, but I think it starts with being authentic and real, and saying, hey, like, this is what I have going on. I know I can't be alone. Here's what I'm going to do about it, and I hope you can benefit from it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, cultivating a community of influence on any platform, then could be leveraged as a resource, so to speak, for new people that you want to help, and like could kind of be a constant pool of access or opportunity depending on who you're talking to or what they're trying to do. But I love that. I think like I did a video on LinkedIn a couple weeks ago, and it was like the foundation of your personal brand. One is you, and then two is your goals. And like between those two things, you kind of create like a bearing, right, that you can align to. And if you have that in mind, and back to the idea, like you are yourself, you are your brand. Let's not become someone different. Tanner, the cook. Like you do like food, so maybe that's no, like, as long as those things are aligned, if you're creating something that's true to who you are and is going to, something you're motivated about and exciting about that could potentially lead to one of those opportunities. And like, I guess to that point though, it can be a very extended process. Like, let's be real. This could take years. It's not going to be like in 2 weeks, I've cultivated this incredible community and now I'm giving everyone the opportunity they want. But you almost build like this hard to measure brand equity. Like that's the hard part of the conversation. It's like, you're investing all this time in content, you're doing this, but there's like something to be said for like just popping up in someone's LinkedIn feed. And I don't know if it's going to be measured by a video view or a comment or a like, but like, oh, there he is. And like, there he is again. And like, oh, he's still talking about that. And like this idea of like, what's your brand equity with the different people in your network and how does that increase as you upgrade or like, up your output is something that I'm super bought into right now. And like, it's when you're trying to sell a client on this invisible idea, like, all right, like, let's just calm down a second. But I think for you, man, it could reap rewards because your network is already pretty expansive. And it's like, if you can just kind of give yourself more at bats, how many times you step up to the plate and try to hit another piece of content out, that's where you start really reaping rewards after you've kind of accumulated that load,
Yeah, I love that concept of brand equity. And I think it's extremely important because I never want to be that person that's only posting, when I need help, right? I want to build a community that I give back to on a daily basis so that when, if I need something or want to help crowdsource some help for someone else, it's like equitable relationship. And I think that's really important rather than just trying to like take, because I mean, you're not going to build a strong network that way. But to answer your other question more concretely, as far as what kind of content I want to create, I was thinking about a post I recently did, and it was such a simple post. I was working, and this idea came to my mind. And yeah, I was thinking about
this trended. This was like this post is trending in compassion. It got killer. This is awesome.
Yeah, and so I think there's a couple lessons I learned from that personally, because it was a post that was describing the power of a thank you note. And I was pretty much giving a shout out to my mom growing up. And I said, in the moment, my birthday, Christmas, etc., were great days, right? I got a lot of gifts. I was happy. It was awesome. But the day after, I had to then write that stack of blank canvases called thank you notes, right? And everyone, a lot of people can resonate with that, and I'm grateful that they did it. But I was able to use something so real, and that was something that was so true to me and my background that I know others could resonate with, and tie that to a lesson, especially now with the global environment of saying, hey, take a moment to thank someone, whether it's a physical thank you card or it's a text to check in. I think I actually called you like that next day, and I was just want to be like, hey, like what's going on? Like, you started a new business venture. Things are crazy right now. Like, how are you holding up?
Yeah, exactly.
And I challenge people on that to be more empathetic, to be more compassionate. And that of all things, because it was raw and authentic, was the post that started trending. And I think I'm at over 11,000 views on it. And it's crazy, right? And it's something so simple of a thank you card, but it's real, and people resonated with it, and it was relevant. And so it was really powerful to see how something so simple
makes it real, right? Like, and it goes back to like the proper foundation of like creating content. Like you did it with impact, intention, like a genuine spirit. Like it was rooted in good, man. And like good can really triumph online when it carries a message like that. So I mean, you're already making some good headway in your content creation journey.
Yeah, well, that's actually, it brings up a good point, because like the next thing that I would be curious about is, okay, I had a post that was relatively successful, right? I posted the next day and got 3 likes, and it was very little, and that's totally fine, right? I'm not exactly, it's the wave, but
welcome to the content.
But for me, it wasn't like, oh wow, no one liked this, because I mean the message was just as powerful to me, if not more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something that I don't know if there's an answer to it. If you have an opinion, I'd love to hear it. But like,
Dude,
you know, it's the waves,
for
but
sure.
when both are still tied to something I'm passionate about personally, and I think there's a relevant
Yeah.
application of it, but yet one flops and one is great. Like, you know, how do you can't really control that, but I
Yeah.
don't know. What's your opinion on that?
I love what you were saying about like giving, right? And I think for me, I try to create something that I'm so like happy and fulfilled with when I put it out, that no matter how it performs, I'm going to be stoked that I like put it together and put it out, because I enjoyed the process. I had a fun time talking about it, like this, dude.
Yeah.
You know, like if we have 30 people watch, if we have 5 people watch this, like I
Yeah.
can have a great conversation with a good friend about a topic I love, which is like a fun process for me. So I think it comes back to being so like confident, self-aware that you're doing something you love, that, you know, the pluses and minuses of how content performs, they're not going to get you down. And you're going to be able to just stay consistent with it. Because the next point of it is like, you have to be so consistent and just keep putting stuff out, because it is going to pop. And, you know, it may be 10 posts from now, you may get it in 2 posts from now, but you never really know ahead of time what's going to happen. So you kind of have to be just, you have to be fulfilled with it before it goes out, in my opinion, to continue doing it. And like, it goes back to making sure it aligns with you. Like if you're putting on a front because you just want to get likes, you know, if you're just putting on some like bikinis just to get a lot of likes, you're not going to be fulfilled in that long term. Short form, yeah, you got a couple hundred likes and some great comments, and like some dude commented on it and made you feel good. But long term, you're going to be like, I have to put on a bikini every time to take a photo. I can't just be myself. And the same principle, that's a very extreme example, but the same principle applies. I have to put on this fake hat every time I want to post on LinkedIn and like act like I'm this, you know, professional so and so. Like, no, be real, like be you, and be intentional about what you're doing. So yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the best place to put your mind, because the second you start living by the numbers, I feel like you've lost the battle, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, it goes back to like the psychological aspect of what LinkedIn did when they removed how you can see number of likes.
Yeah.
You know, I love that, right? I mean, that's a simple example, but, and I think that's why, you know, when I want to tie my content to kind of my purpose, and whether that's, you know, connecting to people to opportunities where they get fulfillment from, it's kind of the same philosophy, right? If my fulfillment is in them becoming fulfilled, then, you know, the wave of numbers, it doesn't matter at all, right? If one person sees it, if you know 5 people see it, you know, my assumption is that benefited them, and that's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. What was the impact that carried? Dude, a great example of this actually is a dude or a guy we're working with here locally, G Patel, who's like a hospitality entrepreneur, and putting out, you know, a lot of content and posts around offering free meals to people in the hospitality industry. And, you know, to some people, it's like, all right, well, that post got 100 likes. Like, okay, I see influencers get thousands and thousands of likes. Like, was that really successful? Like, well, it hit the 100 people that were able to impact a life to have a free meal. Like, what is the value you put on, you know, 10,000 surface level impressions because you look nice, as opposed to lives that you hit? And I think that's like, that's a great, you know, thing to be working towards, because it will be more fulfilling. It will be longer lasting, right? It's not such a superficial thing, you know?
Yeah, it's like it's people you have relationship with versus people that idolize yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and that's big. Like, and from personal fulfillment too. You know, we've heard how many stories of celebrities and top athletes that make it to the top, and they say, man, you know, they get millions of likes, millions of shout outs. Like, they can't walk around without being like idolized, right? And they say it's just not worth it. But, you know, you think of these smaller people that you don't even know their names, but they have 100 or 50 or 5 real strong relationships where they're being able to benefit each other in those. I mean, that's huge. And that's a ripple effect, right? Because you impact them, and then they impact more and more and more. And I think that's really what I want to do with content, is I want to start that ripple, right? And I think I mentioned that in that one post is I want to say something that inspires others to action. And I don't need credit. I don't need anything, right? But I want them to take that post and then post it themselves, or translate it to how it's impactful for them, and then they all start ripples, and it just keeps going and going
Dude,
and going.
I love the ripples.
Yeah.
So sick. Make some
Yeah.
waves with some ripples.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool, man.
But it's cool, and it's a good analogy too, because like, you got waves and then you got ripples. Ripples are smaller, right? And it goes back to the lowering the barrier. You know, you don't need to make a big splash. You know,
No,
you're not coming in trying to do a jackknife and do it into the deep end, right? You're just pitter pattering in the shallow end.
style right off the bat.
Exactly. Right. But you make a ripple, and those ripples, if you think about it for the sake of the analogy, ripples go all the way across the pool, right?
Yeah.
As do waves. And it's not a big impact, but or so it seems on the surface. But when you look at the relational aspect and deeper of who your network is,
Yeah.
you're really making tangible impact.
Yeah. And then you do it again and again, and you that consistency, dude. Because they're going to be seen by people, right? And like that goes back to the brand equity thing of like, hey, this dude's making all the ripples in the wave.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so that's another, I guess, tangential point is from a consistency perspective. I'd love to hear your thoughts there too, because like I feel like for me, I pick up my content when I have something big or important coming up or going on, like the conference, right? That was the most I ever posted. That was the first time I ever made a video, and I did it multiple times. And then honestly, since then, I've had a few posts here and there on LinkedIn, Instagram, you know, on my stories and stuff.
So
but
glad you said this because I wanted to talk about this and I totally forgot about it. So dude,
let's do it.
It's huge because the consistency thing is one of the hardest parts because you like if we sat here, we could think of like 5 posts and then we'd be like, all right, like we'll think of 5 later. So how does that ongoing process get brought to life? And I call it like you have to be a DJ, all right? So like bear with me on this. So like a DJ will take songs from less known artists, better known artists. They'll take that song in, they'll put their own beat on it, change the drop, whatever, and then they put it out to their audience. So what they did is they effectively just took some content, remixed it, made it sound nice, and put it out to their audience without really creating anything. They didn't start from scratch. They just like tweaked some things. So for us, whether we're professionals, whether we're cooks, whatever we want to be doing, we can remix information as many times as we want. The thing that we have to dial in is who are our sources of remixable information. And that comes down to if I want to be talking, I keep going back to chefs. I don't know why food is like, I haven't eaten dinner, so maybe I'm like this right now. But if I'm a chef that wants to put out a lot of recipe content, I want to put out a lot of cool stuff. If I subscribe to chefs and I monitor their stuff, or if I have Pinterest boards, I can pull from those things, take that mac and cheese recipe, add my own secret sauce to it and put it out. If I'm a personal branding, I want to be a personal brand. I want to speak on stages about personal branding. If I subscribe to some personal branding experts and I take their information in and then say, oh, that sounds great. Let me just add a little extra sprinkle of Jeb on that and then put that out to my audience. I'm just functioning as a DJ. And what I have to be conscious about and very aware about is like, what are my sources of bringing in information so that I know I'm putting out information. And then what you start doing is you're building better brand because what you're saying has come from someone, like it's attached to a source of like that people respect, whether it's a news source or a bigger influencer, and you can source the information from that person. Like it's not a problem to say, hey, I got this great idea from so and so, I thought this was awesome because, and you just add a little interpretation to it and put it out. And what you're doing is effectively becoming a channel of really quality information. And then after you put in a lot of time in that, back to that idea of like, hey, that process could be pretty extended, then you get to the point of like, hey, guess what I thought of when I woke up this morning? And like, it's legit because you did so much work by just processing, interpreting, learning. So to your point, how do you stay consistent? You got to find the sources that are going to fuel your creative spirit for whatever industry you want to speak to. And don't be afraid to crowdsource from other creators or crowdsource from other thought leaders to be able to fuel your own social media. I think like, you know, some of the greatest paintings were copied, right? Isn't that one of the things about like the Sistine Chapel or something that like the design was copied? Or anyways, I could probably butchered that, but whatever it is, like the concept stays. Like figure out what you want to DJ and then just rinse and repeat time and time again and get that consistency up.
Yeah, and I think when I'm thinking about it, right? I mean, very little, if any, of an individual's content is completely their own, right?
Yeah,
We all are learning from so many different channels. And so when I think about it that way, I think that also is another way to lower the barriers of, hey, you don't need to be an independent thought leader where
no.
you're changing the world. You can
Matter
hear
of fact,
something.
if you are, people will hate you because they'll
Yeah,
start doing not-knows kid that thinks he knows
right.
everything. You're like,
Right, exactly. You're so far out there, but
yeah.
if you keep it real and you hear something that inspires you, you
Mm-hmm.
put your your flair on it, your
Yeah,
taste
yeah, yeah, yeah.
to your point, and then it's impactful for yourself and the ones around you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting, yeah. And I think that's a very simple, practical way to lower the barrier and just be
For
like,
sure.
hey, I can just spit out content
Yeah.
with my flair on it.
And they'll be like, oh, Tanner actually reads books, or he actually subscribed to the New York Times. Like, I love that about this kid. It's like
Right, yeah.
indirect. Like, that's not the direct association, but indirect is like, oh, he is educated. Or like, hey, look,
Yeah.
I didn't know he was about that. So you kind of hit on a lot of different fronts with that, and it ends up really paying a lot back to your brand by being associated with this quality information, right?
Right. So on the it seems like consistency is pretty important, right? And it doesn't have to be, again, a bunch of big hitters back to back to back. But I would assume as you get more into content, you probably have like a content schedule, a flow. You're kind of building things out.
Yeah.
So what does that look like? I mean, if you want to really be serious about content, is it an everyday something? There's obviously a lot of channels. I mean, you got probably 5 or 6 different big social media platforms right now. Is it hitting all of those on a daily basis? Is it, how do you pick, right? Do I want to focus just on LinkedIn, on TikTok, on Instagram? There's a lot of things out there.
Yeah, and this is where the conversation gets kind of tricky because for me, like, I'm actually unsatisfied, very unsatisfied with my ability to output content right now, primarily because we're like a two-person agency trying to service, 8 to 10 clients. And that's like, it's honestly kind of sucky to have to use time as the excuse, but I guess it's kind of what I'm going to go to right now. I think that honestly, you probably can't be putting out too much content if the intention behind the content is to add value and like have impact. Where it gets like really bad is when people are just like putting stuff out to fuel their own ego. Like, here's another inspirational quote with me looking off into the distance 4 times a day. Like, that's where it gets old. But if the underlying foundation to what you're putting out kind of ties back to what we've been hitting on, like you probably can't overdo it because the people that are going to be in tune with that are going to be the type of people you want to be speaking to. For me, the way that I try to hold myself accountable, because I am trying to be very intentional about putting out content and really like holding myself accountable, being that I do like preach about personal branding to some of my clients, I hold myself like a weekly minimum. And I know that, hey, I want to speak about e-commerce, video editing, and personal branding, at least in one format each week across all of my channels. So I hold myself to that like minimum barrier. If I did that, then this week wasn't like a loss, so to speak. But definitely as I move forward, I definitely want to think about trying to create more pieces of like long form content that I can cut down and use across my different platforms. So like conversations like this hopefully can then be cut down into 4 or 5 pieces of content that are then giving me more frequency. And that's the big thing for me right now is like, hey, now that you are on this journey of entrepreneurship, now that you're not necessarily having to be in this office time frame, like what levers can you pull to up your content creation more and more? How can you be doing more documenting? How can you make the content process less intense and really just keep that going? But right now, man, it's definitely one of my biggest obstacles, I'd say, is really figuring out what that's going to look like for me. But I know my topics, I know my minimum, and now I got to start pulling levers to get off of that.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's good. And I like with most things, there's no magic number, but I like the thematics there of, hey, this is my brand. These are things I talk about. I want to at least talk about 1, 2, and 3 this week at some point. That kind of reduces the anxiety. And throughout the week, as you have thoughts, you can really target those.
And it's
I
like,
think
to be real, I mean, most people are not posting content, right? So if you are even at like a 1 to 2 post a week frequency where you're adding value and adding intention with thought behind it, you're definitely above a lot of the pack. But if you're really trying to position yourself in that top bracket, then you really got to be intentional about it and say, what is my daily post? What does my Instagram story look like? What am I constantly putting out? But I mean, for me, I've gained so much more brand exposure and equity from posting once a week on LinkedIn with a chunky video that adds a little value and some meat. And that's getting me a lot of inbound traffic and phone calls just off of people like, hey, I really like the way that you're marketing yourself right now. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I kind of felt like I dipped my toe in the water. But that being said, when you kind of compare yourself to the crowd, I guess you can feel good about knowing that each week I'm coming in and I'm gonna, I'm gonna get myself an at bat every week. And then I can only imagine what's gonna happen for my exposure and my brand once I can be at that 4, 5, 6, 7 post frequency a week where I'm really getting out there and really putting out a lot of content. But I think it will really open people's eyes to be like, oh, I consistently posted one time a week for 2 months and I got all of this inbound traffic, or I got all these comments, or like, I think you will see that, especially on a platform like LinkedIn, because there's so much organic reach on a platform like that. Now, Instagram and Facebook will definitely silo you, but like, I tell everyone, if you're not on LinkedIn right now, now is the time, because you can get so much organic exposure there. They're craving content. So that's where I've actually seen the most success for my stuff recently is on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's phenomenal. I want to play devil's advocate real quick, because so where I'm at, right, is I don't do content as my profession. It's not my job, right? It's kind of a side hustle. It's something I'm curious about.
Yep.
I have seen, quick little successes, like a post I made a couple of days ago, and I know that made an impact. And for some, not me right now, because I want to continue pursuing, but for some, that could be enough, right? That just kind of fills the itch. They go back to day-to-day life, and then they're like, oh, I want to post something again. So what are some of the benefits, and like, why should, and maybe not everyone should, and that's totally fine, but
yeah,
why should people pursue it more? Like, what is it about content that you feel is valuable, and that just that little rush of endorphins when you make an impact with that little ripple, what makes people want to continue doing that?
Dude, I think I'll approach this from one angle, and then you can tell me if you agree with this or not. But like, so when I've hired people to join my team or to be a part of a company, I always check out their LinkedIn portfolio. So I'm gonna go LinkedIn heavy with this response, and we can see how we like it. Every time I go to their LinkedIn portfolio, I immediately go look at what they post after I've like scanned their thing. If you give me two people, one person who just applies, like 2 college kids, one just applied, has a nice looking LinkedIn, it's put together. All right. The next person posts, and throughout their whole time in college, once a month, they posted something that they learned in college that they really appreciated, engaged in the comments. I'm going to go 9 times. I mean, I'm also in content, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Showing that you're putting forth intention, you want to add value to your audience. I think it shows that like you as a person care about like kind of adapting to the modern world, being a participant in our digital society, that you have good intention with the content you put out. And I would appreciate that. I think it would also apply to hiring managers and other positions as well, though, because we all link our LinkedIn portfolios on our resumes now. If you're going to be sending people there, you want it to be a very accurate representation of who you are. And I don't know about you, but I would say that my LinkedIn, profile page isn't nearly as good as showing you my personality and who I am as a video is that talks about something I'm passionate about. So, we're all going to be creating content in different topics, whether I'm a salesperson, whether I'm a social media manager, whether I'm in HR. But if we're passionate about our specialty, and our specialty is true to who we are, imagine how far that's going to go in the eyes of a hiring manager, a future boss, a leader at EY, showing that you consistently are engaged and active and inspired by your work goes a long way in a professional setting, to really, I would hope at some point advance your career. Now, the thing that you said that's interesting is like, well, if I had posted 3 videos and someone else posted 0, does it really matter when or how recent those were? And I mean, that's an interesting question. I would argue that you're going to get potential more visibility of opportunities you don't even know about right now by putting out more content. And if you are doing it just for the outcome of one of those things, then I would probably say that the purpose of what you're creating is misplaced. That you should be thinking about your audience and its impact it's having, as opposed to the outcome you're going to get from it.
Yeah. No, I like that a lot. That's good. Because I think I lost my train of thought. uh,
the frequency question and other platforms, I think, are harder to navigate than some, right? Like, should you be as consistent on, a TikTok if your idea is to increase your professional network? Like, I don't know. I would argue that, if you're putting out content that aligns with your passion on TikTok and using the right hashtags, you're probably going to garner a little bit of attention. It may be a long-term play, but, content on a platform like TikTok stays relevant even beyond when it's been posted. It's that idea of like delayed virality on TikTok is something unique, kind of like Pinterest. Posts that came up, or something you posted 3 weeks ago could still get massive reach because that's the way the TikTok algorithm works. So,
yeah.
People right now, I talk to a lot of brands that are like, I really want to grow my Instagram. I really want to make that pop. I'm like, well, let's be honest right now. Unless you're going to pay, like, it's going to be really hard to get viral attention on a platform like Instagram. But TikTok, if you're posting a bunch of videos that are fun, short form, bite size, and engaging, it's not unrealistic to think that you could get some viral growth there and then drive that traffic to other platforms. So the conversation, can really shift and adapt depending on what platform we're talking about.
Yeah.
And it can be really hard to get some people to believe that, some platforms are appropriate for some things and other things aren't. But I'm definitely from the school of thought of like, if you can and you have the means to be publishing on wherever you can, just do it, because the cost is zero, right? Other than time. And there's really not that many negative outcomes unless you really get wrecked by, or unless you're really uncomfortable with like negative feedback, which you totally have to throw to the side in this world.
Right. So I think what I was trying to say a little bit ago when I forgot it was, I think one of the big pushbacks is the concept of what's essential versus what's a differentiator, right? You were talking about, you got two people. Yeah. The one with more content, it's a way to differentiate themselves, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's an interesting point, especially with something like content that, it's lower barriers than people think, but you still got to hustle, you still got to grind, you still got to make the posts, right? You got to make it meaningful. And so when people get so busy and bogged down, I think that's one of the things that just goes. But I think what's really
answer Susie's question here, because she asked the first question. We very much appreciate that. Would you mind sharing a bit about how you become inspired about what and when you post your content? I love that question. And I think I'm going to go back to my thing I was saying about being a DJ. And I think, finding inspiration just out of the blue can be really tough. But we were talking about how if you subscribe to people that you appreciate, content that you respect, you can pull from their thoughts and their feelings to help inspire the content that you create and help kind of give you a pipeline of ideas, if you will, to keep yourself active online. So a lot of the content that I've put out in the past, I've learned from other social media influencers. I give credit where credit is due, and that definitely kind of keeps me going on a weekly basis when I don't necessarily feel inspired for that more like personal branding, e-commerce kind of professional content, I'd say. Then in terms of just like the more creative stuff that I do, a lot of that is inspired by current like concert videographers or other creative editors that I subscribe to. So I think a lot of the kind of creativity, so to speak, has been sourced and inspired by other creators. And I try to be very intentional about paying attention and subscribing to people that I appreciate online. Yeah. So
yeah.
Did I lose you? So let's jump back into what you were saying.
I'm here.
Yeah.
It was this idea of, what is essential versus what is kind of, icing on the cake or differentiator. And I think, that's applicable to so many things, but I think this day and age, content is probably one of the biggest differentiators. Yeah. And I was gonna try to even push back harder on you, but as I was thinking through it, it's really one of those things that, it used to be on a resume, and this is still good, but like, you know, were you an Eagle Scout, right?
Yeah.
And you know, what certifications and what things did you have to separate yourself?
Yep.
Now it's way more purposeful. It's, you know, what do you care about? What are you
Yeah.
passionate enough to share with the world? And when I was thinking about that from a consulting lens, and I want
Yeah.
to kind of get
Well, I was
back,
about to ask you. I was like, dude, you're in
yeah.
HR like every day. Like, how does that get brought to life? Is that even like a real? Is it valid to you to even think like that?
Yeah, I mean, well, here's the thing, right? When you're looking at hiring somebody, it's a
Yeah.
two-way street, right? I want to hire someone that I want to work with. And what better way to know someone than to watch a video like this, to see how they interact, to
Yeah.
see what they vibe with, you know,
Mm.
what they, yeah, like all of those tangibles, it's like you're working with them. And
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
other,
Dude, that's
when I
really
think
good.
about when I think about it, no other hiring practice does that. I mean, outside of an interview, and that's so structured, you're
Mm.
seeing, you know, Sunday's best,
Yeah.
right? This is, you know, no strings attached. You know, I'm gonna say what I believe and what I want, because it's what I feel is impactful for others to hear.
Oh yeah.
And that's content at large. And so, yeah, when you look at the HR industry and then, you know, step further into consulting, I mean, there's tangible benefits. When you think about
Mm.
staffing, if I'm the client and I'm staffing a team from,
Yep.
you know, a big consulting firm, and I go on LinkedIn and, you know, sure, they have Harvard, they have the Ivy Leagues, right? They have
Yep.
all the credentials, all the experience, great. But I still don't know much about them. You know, if I had a firm that everyone had a strong personal brand, and you could say, hey, here's our team portfolio, here's some
Ooh.
candid videos of how
Yeah.
they act, like that would be huge. And then think about, you know, this side by side where you got A and B.
Mhm.
It's, you know, you got this one team who has the qualifications, right? On paper, on smart, they could do the job for sure. But you got this other team that has demonstrated their passion and their purpose in their personal lives, and you know how that's going to translate into professional lives.
Yeah.
And so, like, when I think about that from consulting, I mean, EY has 290,000 employees,
Right.
right? What percentage or how many of those people, if you went on LinkedIn, have even one video or
Mm.
have even one
Dude.
post? I
Right.
would say yeah, a
Yeah.
fraction, maybe 3%, 4%.
Yeah.
Like, and those in consulting is, you know, cutting edge, right? And they're providing solutions to clients
Yep.
that they don't know how to solve themselves. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so when you kind of tie that all together, it's really fascinating from a staffing perspective, and a way that big time firms could differentiate themselves as well from a talent perspective.
Oh yeah. I mean, give me videos like this every day to pick out who I want to join my team, as opposed to pieces of paper. And I'm going to be able to tell you really quickly that I either like this kid a lot, or it's not going to be
Right.
too fit.
Yeah, there's, I mean, you can only teach so much, right? A good attitude, someone who's inspiring and passionate about something,
Yeah.
you know, you can't tell that from a piece of paper, and a lot of times you can't tell that from an interview. So it's what these people do on the side. It's really interesting.
Yeah. I love the idea that like it really does show your purpose and like what you want to stand for. And I think that's kind of important in a lot of different walks of life. Well, I mean, the professional setting is definitely kind of the frame we've had here for LinkedIn, but like it's so relevant to like just hold like put out what you believe in, who you want to be, what you stand for, like what's your kind of mission in life. And you can do that so well now with content. And just like what we're doing here, man, we're having a conversation on a cell phone. I'm like,
Yeah.
it just show. I hope this kind of goes to show that you don't have to think about making it all super pretty and beautiful to make it happen and have impact. So yeah, man.
Absolutely. I mean, it's been huge, big for me just to do this and have a conversation. I mean, by no means is content my sweet spot, or do I even have, you know, a ton of knowledge about,
Yeah.
but the underlying principle is a curiosity. And I think that goes a long way in content as well. What are you curious about? Is it a topic you know nothing about? Okay, go read a blurb and then post your insights about it. You
Yeah.
know, start there. If that hooks, if that you know is something that, you know, latches onto you, keep it rolling. If it doesn't, find something else. You know, be a lifelong learner and a lifelong person who is curious, and build your brand around that. Obviously,
Yeah.
with some intent of knowing what you personally want to do.
That's killer. Dude, I love that. I think that's what we gotta leave the people with.
Yeah,
Be a DJ, be inspired by the information around you. Don't be afraid to kind of repurpose and hold yourself, consistent based off of the people that inspire you, the information that you intake. and use that as like a way to kind of propel your content forward, always, always stay true to yourself. Don't let that get compromised. So you know what we got to send them away with, though, right?
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna do the countdown. I get to do the countdown, though. All right.
All right, that's fine. I'll give you your limelight.
All right, lads and ladies and lads. 3, 2, 1.
Peace.